And you're seeing that. I think the fun time is coming back into it now. I think that the fear from these two events has kind of washed out of the market. People are starting to fade it into memory, and everyone's now starting to get excited. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. It is just Simon today. Will is unavailable, but I thought I wanted to get on and just talk about the current market, because since the last time we did one, there's been a fair bit of movement. We've slightly seen the market change from being just in that apathetic state to a little bit of excitement, a little bit of price action. Obviously, price going up, everyone's excited rather than fearful. So that's a nice little change. And I think I'll just put the chart on while I talk so we can have a talk about it. Yep, there we go. Okay, so what's happened since the last time we chatted? Well, in the last 10 days, I guess we've kind of had two big things. I think one was very recent, the other one was a little bit before then. First one was probably the kind of leaked news, kind of not so leaked news, just speculation of the ETH merge date. Everyone loves a narrative in crypto. Everyone loves to justify price movements. And a lot of the time there is a news event or something that kind of triggers a bit of price action. And it's pretty undeniable that Ethereum had a big push up on the announcement that September 17th, that we could see the ETH merge going ahead. So the change from proof of work to proof of stake. So that buoyed the market. Hang on, let's go on Ethereum. So that was right about then. So we had a big push up from Ethereum, which is very interesting to see, very good to see. And then the more recent one, which is literally only the other day, is the Federal Reserve in the US only raising the interest rates by 75 basis points. I guess there was a big perceived expectation that it was going to be 100 basis points, especially given that they had the high inflation rate number. So everyone thought they were going to continue their aggressive stance on trying to fight inflation. But they didn't do the 100 basis points. So the market took that well and took that as a sign. And so I think that was about here where we did have a fair push down or a bit of a giving back some of the gains. And then off that news, we did have both Bitcoin and Ethereum and the Nasdaq. They also kind of took off based off that less hawkish news from the Federal Reserve. So what do I think that means? So I kind of think that this is the beginning of a very gradual pivot. People talk about what's going to be the catalyst for the next bull market. So one of the catalysts people always talk about is the ETH merge. I think the other one has been the Fed pivot. People talking about the Fed pivot. At some point in time, people say that the Federal Reserve can't keep raising interest rates, can't keep quantitative tightening. They're going to cause too much damage to the economy and to businesses, that they would have to turn it around and start cutting interest rates and start quantitative easing again to keep the system going. And I kind of believe that's somewhat true, but the Fed pivot, it's not going to be an instantaneous change. It's not going to go from the aggressive hawkishness that they've been on, which is raising interest rates quite aggressively to combat inflation. I think it's going to be a gradual turnaround, and I think this recent announcement could have been that's them starting to signal that they're turning back towards dovishness. They're nowhere near dovishness yet, but maybe the peak hawkishness is over, the peak aggressiveness of the Fed is over, and maybe this is them starting the taper back, starting to go back in the other direction. So will there be more interest rate rises? Yes, probably. There'll probably be everywhere globally. There'll be some more interest rate rises. So it's not like this is the turning point and they're going backwards, but it's just the peak aggressiveness could be there. So what does that mean for the entire market in general? Well, if it's true, I think this recent reaction could be the markets actually responding to that, and it's not just my theory. That this is true. The markets could be saying, "Hey, hang on, we're seeing the Fed's pivoting. We know what that means. We know this is going to be a slow change, but the market is starting to see that and start to go a bit more risk on again as they see the unwind going on. And so I guess the other big questions that always come about is does that mean the bottom is in? Does that mean the bull market is back on? Let's get back to Bitcoin. Everyone wants to know, is the bottom in? Was it 17 and a half, something like that? Is that the bottom of this bear market? Maybe it is. I kind of, there's been so much calling for lower. Everyone, expecting the 85% drawdown from the 69 to that 13K mark, and it could happen. But if you look at what the market's been through, we've been in a downtrend for quite some time, but we've had two huge, not necessarily macro events, but two huge catalysts to the market. Like this drop here was the Luna USD debacle, shall we call it, and that massively put fear in the market, and we dropped like crazy then. And then here is the Three Arrows Capital and Celsius Network. Let's call it another debacle, hey? Let's keep things friendly. Again, a huge push, a huge drive down. Massive fear in the market. What the fear and greed index got down to like 6. So that was a capitulation. That was a capitulation. No matter what anyone says, that is a capitulation. Could we have another capitulation? Sure, we could. Absolutely. You don't really know what other big macro event could come along, which could cause another big, drop. A huge recession could absolutely do it. But a huge recession would be a huge response by the Federal Reserve or any central bank for that matter to help alleviate that. So that would also be, the dovish case that's going on. That's the real aggressive Fed pivot. If the economy gets really crushed, then interest rates drops and quantitative easing kicks back into gear to keep the system rolling, because that's their toolbox. That's what they can do. So I wouldn't be surprised if the bottom is in. I also wouldn't be surprised if it's not. I hope we don't have another event that could cause these kind of drops. But the market always has these. The 2018 bull market, we had plenty of catalysts that caused huge drops as well. I do think this time, though, unlike here where we've had a bit of accumulation in those ranges, I think that it would be more of a V-shaped recovery this time. I think if we drop below, there's so many stable coins sitting on exchanges ready to be deployed, that I think if we did drop below the 20K mark and push down towards those and put in another low, it would wick down and it would come back up, because I think there's plenty of people sitting with money on the sidelines to buy that up this time. I think there's enough stable coins sitting there hoping for that opportunity. So could we go down? Yes, there's definitely no doubt there could be a macro event that could cause it. I think it'd be bought up aggressively this time, though, and I don't think we would stay down there for long. I think we would push back up to that 20K mark fairly quickly, as people think this is it, this is the bottom, this was the big final capitulation, and we would then range again. So I think longer term, I think we're going to be stuck in this 20 to 30K range for quite some time, months, for a very long time. I think that the bull markets, everyone talks about the catalysts for the next bull market. I think there's two kind of things that I'm aware of that people mostly talk about, one being the Ethereum merge, and the other one being the Fed pivot, which we've kind of talked about. But as I said, I think the Fed could be doing the start of that pivot now, but the real signal that the Fed pivots is when they drop interest rates or they turn quantitative easing back on, because I think they'll go from what they're doing now. I think they're going to be dropping interest rates, increasing interest rates, but at a smaller amount. So maybe it'll be 50 basis points, maybe another 75 basis points, but it'll be 50, 25 basis points, holding rates, stopping quantitative tightening, and then the real pivot will be when they go, oh, now we're dropping interest rates and we're starting quantitative easing. That's the official pivot, but I think the market will have already been on its way up by then, because I think the signal will be there. So I think we've got to look out for that. Is that the actual pivot when they change tactic, the bull market will already be on its way. Could the ETH merge in September trigger the bull market? No. Could it trigger some good price action then? Yes. And maybe it has. Maybe the announcement shows the market. If the bottom is in, then I guess probably this announcement of the ETH merge could be considered the start of the beginning of the bull market as we start gradually grinding our way back up. But I think we've got a long way to go. I think we've got months and months of this, so I don't think anybody needs to be too worried about buying in. I think there is 6, 12 months, even longer, of a lot of sideways action. I think once we reclaim that 30,000, there's a lot of support in that area. So it's kind of a case of, I think we've got months ahead of us between 20 and 30. I think once we get above that, I think 30 is going to be a huge support and be an interesting one to see if we ever go below that again. I also think that altcoins are still very risky because, as I said, we could still have a big drop down, and I think the market is still very risk off. So if the market shows some red, then the alts are still going to bleed like absolute crazy. So I think everyone is still ready to run from the alts. So it's a time to dollar cost average into Bitcoin, Ethereum for sure. It's a time to have a small percentage going into some really high conviction altcoins that you might have. It's time to stay away from the speculation ones. I would rather risk missing out on some of that gains than the potential drops, because I think the probability of altcoins going lower is too great. I think there's too much risk in that. So have a strategy, build your own little strategy in place. Make sure you know what percentage of your portfolio you want to have in the different coins. Obviously heavily weighted towards Bitcoin and Ethereum, but have a plan. I think if you're here listening to this, then you're in one of the best positions ever, because you're the one that's going to reap the rewards for the next bull market, and this is the time to be there. It's it's a fun time for people who have been around the space. I think, and you're seeing that. I think the fun time is coming back into it now. I think that the fear from these two events has kind of washed out of the market. People are starting to fade it into memory, and everyone's now starting to get excited. And if you're in the space and you're seeing all the developments going on, it's hard not to be excited. So that to me is a bit of a change in the sentiment. I think I'm feeling that change in sentiment, that people are past the ultimate fear. People are not worried about the price going lower anymore. Everyone's kind of just accepted where we are in the market. Prices could go lower, sure, but people are more excited about buying it now than they are, fearful of it going down. So I think that's a real sentiment change, which is, again, to me, is another indicator that potentially the bottom could be in. I think it's an exciting time now, because the people who have been here for a while now know that this is when your life-changing money can be made. Anyway, I'll leave it there, guys. Hope to speak to you again soon. Cheers.